Hi, I'm Brian, and I am the Theoretical Gamer. This time I'm going to be doing another review. It's one that I mentioned once on the RPG Brigade Facebook page. It's it's a rather over-the-top and crazy, absurd game, which I would love to play, called Dungeons the Dragoning 40,000 7th Edition. In the grim darkness of the Great Wheel, there is only war. It is technically considered a parody. It is pushed as a parody, and there's no way it could be sold because there's so much copyright violation. It's awesome, but the author, who runs a blog, who's known only on his blog as lawfulnice.blogspot.com, has basically created an unholy mashup of systems and settings and taken all the most metal parts of all these games and created something very interesting. And although it is technically parody, he has actually put a lot more work than I think he expected to, and put up numerous revisions and versions of it to make an actual playable game. Although the term 7th edition is part of the title, it is not the 7th edition of the actual game. It is the name comes from the fact that a lot of elements of the system and setting are taken from a swashbuckling fantasy game called 7th Sea, right? Which is kind of, from what I recall, is a kind of a Pirates of the Caribbean feel of game. Now, the setting is basically a kind of a weird mashup between Warhammer 40k, Planescape, and Spelljammer. Lots of different races and classes and there's also elements of World of Darkness, there's elements of Exalted, there's Warhammer, Dungeons and Dragons, obviously, 7th Sea, like I said, and just little tidbits thrown, a little bit of Deadlands, tidbits thrown in from everywhere you can think of. It's, in fact, just reading it is a fun game of spotting spotting the references. Let me just read you a paragraph from the introduction to kind of give you the feel of the game. Welcome, friends. You hold in your hands a role-playing game, one that asks you a very important question. Is a man not entitled to the grandest of adventure? No, says the man with the neckbeard. It would be unbalanced. No, says the man in the high heels. It wouldn't be deep enough. No, says the man on the internet. The new edition ruins everything forever. I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose Dungeons the Dragoning. A game where the fighter would not fear the wizard, where the cleric would not be nerfed, where the great would not be constrained by the small. And with the roll of your dice, Dungeons the Dragoning can be your game as well. A lot of the flavor text does tend to follow that unrelentingly macho attitude. There's also a lot of story vignettes, which are obviously stolen from scenes from various like movies or TV shows and just repackaged. You know, it's like, so like I said, it is a game of where did he steal it from. So it's like, okay, the basic rundown. You create a character. You've got of course humans. You know what humans are. In this game, they're considered one of the newer races. They've only kind of recently burst out of their own solar system, and are now making their way across the galaxy, or the Great Wheel, as it's known. There are 3 elfy races. There are the elves, of course. There's the Eldarin and the Dark Eldarin. Of course, the Eldarin are a cross between the Eldar from 40k and the Eladrin. Dark Eldarin are basically Dark Eldar / Drow. There's also Squats, which are dwarves. Aasimar and Tieflings, which are D&D races, but they've got some weird twists on them. They're actually, in this game, they were members of other races that were turned into servants of either order or chaos, presumably willingly. And now they're this member of these other races and gaining special powers. There's orcs. You can play an orc. Yay. Gnomes, halflings. The orcs are closer to 40k orcs. They're just this big angry race of people that just love to fight, and they're not afraid to die, and they're just fight, and bad Cockney accents and stuff like that. And like the 40k orcs are based off British soccer hooligans, basically. Whereas the Dungeons and Dragons version of orcs, it's like they don't even reproduce sexually. They give off spores and grow like big angry potatoes in the ground. But there are in the Dungeons and Dragons version, they do have genders. There are female ones. They are uncommon, but they do exist. And the theory they came up with to justify this is that the male ones are basically the big, ugly shock troops, whereas the female ones, which are closer to other races' standards of beauty, are more along the lines of special forces and stealth missions. Really, it comes down to the rule of cool. You got orcs, you want a bunch of She-Hulks that you can play. In addition to these races, you also choose an exaltation, which is the thing that makes you more than a mere member of your race. There's Atlanteans, which were born with a magical soul that reincarnated from an ancient race, and they get naturally big bonuses on any kind of magical endeavor. There's the Chosen, which is they were chosen by a god to above and beyond a normal cleric. I mean, obviously the cleric and paladin classes would come easily to the Chosen, but these are people that were chosen, literally chosen. Demon Host. Demon Host means you were dying and a demon chose to bond with you to save your life. So in that moment of desperation, you're not quite you anymore. You're not quite the person you were, and you have powers because of it. The Paragon. The Paragon is cool because it's like you don't actually have any. You're not actually changed in any way. You're just one of the top 1 in a billion members of your race. You're awesome not because you're a vampire or a werewolf or an Atlantean or a Chosen. You're awesome because you're awesome. That's really, And I mean, like the other exaltations, you don't age. You are immortal because aging is for losers. You're just better at being. If you're a human paragon, you're the best human. If you're an orc paragon, you're the orkiest orc that ever there was. In addition to which, there's also, like I said, vampires and werewolves. So yeah, you can play. Then there's classes. Classes, you don't choose a class. You choose a starting class because it uses similar to careers in Warhammer, where you work your way through a class and then you move on to another one. And there are class levels, however. There's class progressions. There are 5 fighter classes, like Swordsman, Myrmidon, Fight Guy, Fighter, and Master Fight Guy. And and there's only 5 levels in the game, but these are they're not it's not like D&D levels where you're you're expected to level up every once in a while. It's like if you're at a level 1 class, you're level 1. And then once you get up to a level 2 class, you're level 2, and there's 5 levels of classes. And there's 5 levels of powers. And level 5 means you pretty much have access to everything. And you can still improve. You can still get more classes and more powers and more feats. But you're pretty much a fully matured character. So, there's sorcery. Like I said, sorcery is similar to, I guess, psychic powers in Warhammer 40k in that it's not something you want to easily mess with. If you screw up, you make rolls on this table and can conceivably get sucked into the void and never seen again. There are risks to it, and the spell lists aren't that long. It's like you have all these spell schools like enchantment or illusion or evocation and necromancy, and each one has a fairly short list of like 5 levels of spells, and each one has only like one or like maybe 2 spells per level. But it's enough to give you what you want out of that school. You know, if you choose necromancy, you can suck up people's lives. You can make zombies. You know, that's what it's for, and they don't bog you down with extra stuff. Um, there's other things like sword schools. Now, sword schools is an example of. I've talked about the different styles of games. It's like I think that some games have different levels of what I call. They require a certain level of what I call player buy-in. Now, what player buy-in means is there's a lot of games that even quite complicated games, but only the game master really needs to know the rules. And that's not, and the player can get into his character and get into the story and know basically what his character can do, but not really need to know the rules. He just one of those guys is like, just tell me when to roll. Just tell me what to roll. What die do I roll? He doesn't feel he needs to know the rules, and that's a perfectly valid style of play for many games. Some people are more into the story. Some people are more into playing their character. You know, they don't want to you know, master the rules in depth. You know, they prefer to go all master thespian and play their character the way they you know, or at least explore the world. You know, but I would say that Dungeons and Dragons requires a certain level of player buy-in, which means you can't really do that. Like Sword Schools is an example of this. You can just take, okay, my character has this stat and this skill in sword fighting, and just go with that. But you're not going to get the full effect. So what Sword Schools is you look at this and you have to know the rules of how to do Sword Schools, and you basically invent and buy individual moves for your character. So your character learns this trick of how to parry, this trick of how to get more damage in an attack. So it allows you to really become a master swordsman with all sorts of cool attacks and bonuses, but you have to know how to do it. You have to just sit down and look and figure it out and pay the points and say, okay, my character has learned this. And if you don't like doing that, if you don't like knowing the rules, if you're just one of those people that just wants to sit back and tell me when to roll, you're not going to get the full effect. So that's another term that I'm introducing into the gamer lexicon: player buy-in. So it requires a lot more buy-in to the system. There is one other supplement to Dungeons and Dragons. The guy created a supplement called For a Few Subtitles More. And it has a few more classes and races, like the Dryad, which is an all-female race, which has a very interesting and complex life cycle. The Thri-Kreen, which, if you're familiar with Dark Sun, you know what the Thri-Kreen are. They're this like mantis race. There's a couple more Exaltations, like Wraith and Dragon-Blooded. A lot more classes are listed. More classes. The thing is, some of the classes that they list in the second are not part of a class progression. They are individually independent classes like Operations Officer, Chief of Engineering, Tactical Officer, Science Officer, Captain, which is cool. Which means if your group ever gets access to a ship, you can say, okay, my character is taking the captain class, my character is taking the science officer class, and you can basically, train yourselves as a bridge crew. And also alignments. Alignments are not only similar, they're not like D&D where lawful good, chaotic neutral. They are similar to the morality stats in World of Darkness. Whereas instead of choosing an alignment like lawful, neutral, you choose a god that you follow, or at least, even if you don't worship him, you can kind of agree with him or her and figure out exactly, so it's like when you take the chosen exaltation, you choose which god you have to follow, or at least, and basically each one gives you a code of behavior. Now the main book just gives you a very loosely defined code, but the the supplement for a few subtitles more expands that, adds a few more alignments, i.e., a few more gods, and says, okay, if you and it gives you like a list of hierarchy of sins. Like if you have like a morality stat or a devotion stat, as it's called, of 6, then you could ignore the sins of 7 through 10. They're just piddly little sins. But anything below that will cause you to lose devotion, or at least risk losing devotion. And so clerics can actually take like feats, or they can learn feats or abilities that allow them. You would think that, from a standard, from a normal game balance standpoint, you would think that the clerics of, or at least a chosen of a god, would be even more held to that code of behavior. But it's the opposite. You can learn feats, or you can get special abilities that give you bonuses, because it's like your god's like, he's one of my favorites, I'll let it slide. Or you learn how to game the system, so you get a bonus to keep from losing devotion when you screw up. Which, from a cynical viewpoint, I kind of like that. I kind of like that the true followers of a god have learned how to game the system. And, right. So, of course, you have some gods are, they use order versus chaos, and then there's a group of gods that are kind of in the middle and don't really follow either one. So, and then you got like Lulth. So if you want to play a drow that follows the spider goddess Lulth. You've got like Coralon, which is a very elfy god that loves nature, loves the elves. Vectron. Praise Vectron. That is that one. Like I said, the gods are taken from a lot from D&D, a lot from 40K. Vectron is, that's another obscure reference. That's not from any other game. There is, however, if it comes down to it, you can choose one called Unaligned, which is basically the behavior system for Unaligned is similar to, like, I guess you could say, secular humanism. Don't steal, don't screw people over, don't kill, except maybe in self-defense or defending someone. Like, don't kill unnecessarily. Don't be a dick. But it's also kind of got an atheist overtone. People can be devoted to being unaligned. The number one sin, like the biggest sin for the unaligned alignment, is to pray. That's like the antithesis of what they're trying to pull off. So, but it's I thought of something. There is no rule, and I looked it up. I looked around, and there's no rule that says you can't take the exaltation of chosen and have your alignment be unaligned. So you could be this incredibly devoted Richard Dawkins type who is so devoted to the idea of there being of getting power from yourself and not following a god and being your own person, that no god grants you power. You get power from this lack of God and are chosen by this non-existent non-power to go out and spread the non-word to all the believers and make them into non-believers like yourself. To deconvert them, you have been chosen by nothing and no one and have gotten power therefrom. That would be an awesome character. Right? Like, where do you get your power from? Who grants you your power? No one! Well, then how do you get the power? Because of my devotion. To who? No one! It's awesome. Anyways, this is, from what I've looked, it looks like the system is very deadly. It looks as if the characters can. So you got to be careful. You don't want to rush into every combat. You. It just looks badass overall. I would, if someone wants to. I usually don't try to like say spread the word, get my name out there. I want people to know about this game. I want people to play this game. This is a playable game. There's a lot in here that I haven't even touched on. There's like a lot of rules and there's a lot of background and worlds and and lots of stuff that I haven't even begun to talk about. Just because the guy who created it, technically a parody, it's a labor of love. The guy has put a lot of time and effort into it. The guy has put it's spread the word, get people. It's free. Download it, play it. If, invite me to play. I might have to actually come up. I might actually have to overcome my weird block of having of 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 coming up with good adventures and maybe try, because the thing is I really don't know how to run Google Plus or get this thing set up. I would love to try and I would love to learn, but if anyone else beats me to the punch and does this first, I'm in. Dungeons & Dragoning 40,000 7th edition. Yeah, it's awesome. Spread the word.